Today we are learning ribbed double decreases. This is one of my favorite kind of decreases to work if you're ever in a 1x1 rib, and it is a completely reversible decrease, meaning that if you see the decreases here, I've got 3 decreases on this side and 3 decreases on this side. If you look at the fabric from the right side and you flip it over to the wrong side, it appears identical. So what's great about these decreases is that they're creating the exact same look on right side and wrong side. And the other thing that's nice about this decrease is it always maintains a ribbing pattern. You'll never work one of the decreases and have 2 knit stitches or 2 purl stitches next to each other. You'll always remain in a knit 1 purl 1 relationship throughout the entire fabric. So it's a really cool decrease. It's also pretty easy to work once you get the maneuver in your hands, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways to do it today. In our patterns, we give instructions for how to do this using a cable needle, which is a little bit simpler if it's your first time doing this technique, but I'm also going to show you how to do it without a cable needle. Once you get this technique in your hands, it's one that it's nice not to have to remember to carry a cable needle around when you need to do it, so I like to show it that way, and it's also just personally my preferred way of doing this. So you can see here that I have along the side of the right side of my swatch, I have the decreases that lean to the right. So this knit stitch here overtakes this knit stitch here. Everything leans over to the right. And on the left side, I've got the decrease that leans out to the left. So that's what I'm going to show you today. 2 variations on this, one for right leaning and one for left leaning. And one thing I want to point out is what's leaning right here on this side, when I flip it, is leaning left on the other side. And so it's actually a combination of a right leaning and a left leaning decrease so that it creates this perfect reversible look. So let's jump right in and do these decreases. I'm going to just work across my ribbing. This is just a plain 1x1 rib. I'm going to work across my ribbing to the decrease point. One thing that you'll note on these decreases is you're always going to start them with a knit stitch on your left needle. So you see right now, my next stitch on my left needle is a purl. I would never want to be starting this decrease, either the right leaning or the left leaning, with a purl stitch on the left needle. You're always going to start them when there's a knit stitch there. So I've got my knit stitch here on my left needle. You can see that if I follow that knit stitch down, that column down, that it connects with all the decreases from the rows below. So it's connecting with this single rib, and all the decreases are sort of leaning into that rib. So let's do this with the cable needle the first time. So this is a right leaning rib double decrease using a cable needle. First thing you're going to do, slip the first stitch purlwise from left to right needle. You're going to take your cable needle and you're going to slip the next stitch off of your left needle onto the cable needle. So now I have everything like this. I'm going to take my right needle tip and slip my 3rd stitch. So this is the first stitch over here on the left needle there. So now I've got 2 slipped stitches on my right needle and 1 slip stitch on my cable needle. Now I'm going to take my cable needle and I'm going to put that stitch back on my left needle. So now I've got 2 stitches. These are the 2 stitches that present as a knit on my right needle. And then I've got 2 stitches, the 2 stitches that present as a purl on my left needle. So that's the first step. I'm going to put everything back over. And now I'm going to work 2 decreases. The first one is a knit 2 together. So I'm going to knit the first 2 stitches together from my left, like that. Those are the knit stitches. Now I'm going to work a decrease in purl because these are the 2 stitches that are appearing as purl. So if I did a knit 2 together here, I'm going to do a slip, slip, purl. So I'm going to slip one as if to knit, slip the other as if to knit, replace those back on the left needle, and now I'm going to take my my right needle tip and come through and purl through the back loop, purl 2 through the back loop. That's a little bit tricky, a little bit of a wrist movement there. So again, I'll show you that right needle tip, comes around back through the 2 stitches as if to purl through the back loop, and I'm going to purl those together. And I've just worked the double decrease. Because I worked 2 single decreases, a knit 2 together and a slip slip purl, I've decreased 2 stitches total. So I started with 4 and those now have become 2. And I can see if I look closely that decrease I just made here is leaning to the right. And if I look over on this side, it's leaning to the left. Okay, I'm going to continue ribbing across my fabric and show you the same decrease with the cable needle, but this time one that leans to the left instead of one that leans to the right. And again, always important to know that you are starting this decrease with a knit stitch. So I'm doing a purl. I have a knit stitch first on my left needle, and those next 4 stitches on my left needle are what we're going to be working the left leaning decrease with. So again, slip 1 from left to right, take the cable needle and slip another stitch from left needle onto the cable needle, hold that cable needle in back, take the right needle again, slip another stitch from left to right. Now take the cable needle and return that slipped stitch from the cable needle to your left needle and return 2 stitches from the right. So we've returned all 4 of those stitches, but we repositioned those center 2 stitches. And now for the left leaning, we're going to do another pair of decreases, starting with a slip slip knit. So slip 1 as if to knit, slip the second as if to knit, put them both back on the left and work those together. And a slip and a purl 2 together for the second decrease. So I'm going to bring my yarn to the front. I'm going to work these 2 stitches as a purl 2 together. And again, I've just decreased 2 stitches total, and I'll continue my rib to the end of the row. And you can see now as well that if I look at that decrease that I just did, this rib is overtaking. It's leaning to the left, just like the ones below it are. And if I flip it to the wrong side, you can see that on the wrong side it's leaning to the right, just like the ones below it are. And so that means that both, because we did right leaning and left leaning in this orientation, both sides of the fabric appear identical and maintain a 1x1 ribbing at all times. So that's how you work the technique with a cable needle. Now I'm gonna pick back my row and show you how to do that exact same thing for both sides, but with 1 tool less. All right, so I've picked back my row and we're gonna walk through this again. We're gonna do a right leaning double decrease here and a left leaning double decrease here, this time ditching the cable needle. And you may not be surprised to hear that this is my preferred method. I love to do things with as little tools as possible. And this is a very favorite decrease of mine, so I'm excited to be showing you how to do it this way. Okay, so I'm going to work straight into my ribbing until I hit the point where the decrease is, which again starts with a knit stitch on my left needle. So here's the right leaning decrease without a cable needle. I'm going to start things in a similar way. You're going to start by slipping 1 stitch from left to right as if to purl. Now we're going to skip this stitch and go into the second stitch on the left needle. You see I'm going into it as if slipping purlwise. And we're going to slide both of these 2 stitches off the left needle, but before I do that, I'm going to use my pointer finger on my right side, and I'm going to secure this stitch, because when I slip these off, this one's just going to be floating. This is the guy that's usually held by your cable needle. So I'm taking my right fingertip and I'm pressing it against my right needle in the back just below this live stitch that I'm about to slip off, so that when I slide both of these stitches off, that stitch is not going anywhere. You can see that it's just hanging out even when I move my fabric. And so I've slid both off. I'm going to take my left needle tip behind and grab that floating stitch again, and then separate my needles. And now I'm going to return these 2 stitches that I slipped back to the left needle. So now again, I've got those same 4 stitches that I started with again on my left needle, but stitch 2 and 3, the ones here in the middle, they just got crossed. I just basically crossed them. And now I can work my decreases in the same way. So step 1 is to reposition the stitches. Step 2 is to work the decreases. So I'm going to do the same decreases I did before. I'm going to start with a knit 2 together. I'm doing a knit 2 together over the 2 knit stitches, the stitches that are presenting as knits. Now I'm going to bring my yarn to the front, and I'm going to do a slip slip purl on the second pair of stitches. So I'm going to slip one as if to knit, slip the other as if to knit, put these back on the left needle, and then do a little bit of a wrist action, bring my right needle tip through the back loops of my purls like that, and purl 2 together through the back loop. And that is how you do the right leaning decrease without a cable needle. I'm going to continue across my ribbing and show you the left leaning decrease as well. Okay, so here I am at the position of the left leaning decrease. Note that I'm starting with a knit stitch on the left side. I'm going to start the same way. Take my right needle tip, slip 1 purlwise. Then again, I'm going to do that same thing I did. So I'm going to skip the next stitch on my left needle and go into the second stitch on my left needle from the front like this. So I'm going in like I'm going to slip purlwise. I'm going to take, this time, my pointer finger again. I'm going to slide these 2 stitches off, but before I do, I'm just taking my pointer finger to secure just below those stitches. Slide them off. I'm going to keeping my left needle in back. I'm going to put that floating stitch back on my left needle, pull my needles apart, and replace the 2 slipped stitches from my right to left. So again, that's step 1. I've repositioned the stitches, and now I'm going to work decreases. So for the left leaning, I work an SSK to start. Slip 1 as if to knit. Slip the second as if to knit, put those back on the left needle and work them together. That. So a SSK, and bring my yarn forward, and a P2 tog, a purl 2 together. I'm going to purl those 2 stitches together. And then continue finishing my row in my 1x1 rib. And now, if I flatten my fabric out, you can see that I've got 1 new right leaning decrease here to continue the shaping sequence I've started on this side, and 1 left leaning decrease here that continues the shaping sequence on this side. And again, I know I've said it before, but it's just so cool that the wrong side looks exactly the same. Beautiful. Love that. And that's how you do rib double decreases.